The late afternoon sun spilled through the half-open blinds, casting long stripes across the living room carpet. I sat curled up on the sofa, a mug of coffee cradled between my hands, feeling the warmth seep into my fingers, a small comfort against the chill that had settled inside me. The faint hum of traffic outside mixed with the ticking of the old wall clock, each second stretching a little too long. It was strange how the simplest moments could feel heavy, charged with thoughts that refused to settle. I glanced at the photograph on the mantel, a group of friends at some long ago gathering. Their smiles were bright, unguarded, the kind that made you forget the quiet undercurrents that existed in every friendship. My gaze lingered on him, his easy smile, the way his eyes seemed to hold understanding, even in still photographs. The room smelled faintly of vanilla from the candle I'd forgotten to blow out, a scent that somehow brought back memories of evenings spent talking, of quiet moments where words seemed unnecessary. There was an unspoken rhythm to our interactions, a subtle connection that threaded through the spaces between us. I found myself noticing the little things, the way he would tilt his head when listening, the soft laugh that always seemed to arrive at just the right moment, the way his presence could make the air feel warmer, even on the coldest days. It was a pull, a magnetic weight that existed alongside everything I knew I couldn't say aloud. Outside, a sudden gust rattled the blinds, pulling me out of my reverie. I wrapped my hands tighter around the mug, feeling the heat, but also the tension that had been building all day. I remembered the conversation from earlier, his voice calm yet insistent, asking about my day, about my thoughts, with a patience I sometimes envied. There was safety in that, a strange solace that contrasted sharply with the uncertainty buzzing in my chest. My mind wandered to the quiet walks we had taken, the sound of our footsteps mingling with the rustle of fallen leaves, the way shadows stretched long and thin under the streetlights, mirroring the stretched boundaries of feelings I didn't dare name. Even now, I could hear the faint click of the kettle in the kitchen, the scent of coffee lingering like an echo of comfort. I shifted, trying to focus on the mundane, on the ordinary, but the memory of shared glances, of laughter held just a moment too long, weighed on me. It was in those pauses, in the lingering silences, where the world seemed both unbearably fragile and impossibly alive. The clock ticked on, the light faded slowly to a soft amber glow, and I sat there, suspended between what was and what could never be spoken, caught in a delicate, aching tension that neither time nor distance could fully ease. Rain tapped lightly against the window, a soft, rhythmic sound that matched the steady thrum of my heart. I sat at the edge of the bed, tracing the rim of my coffee cup with my finger, watching the droplets streak down the glass, each one catching the dim light like tiny prisms. The room smelled faintly of lavender and old books, a combination that somehow made the space feel both intimate and heavy with unspoken thoughts. Outside, the world blurred into shades of gray, a soft curtain that seemed to separate me from everything else, leaving only the pulse of quiet and the memories that refused to fade. Earlier that morning, I had walked along the quiet streets, the damp pavement reflecting the neon signs and the occasional flicker of headlights. The air carried a certain weight, a mix of petrichor and lingering city dust, and I breathed it in as if it could fill the empty spaces inside me. I remembered his words from our last conversation, calm and measured, yet somehow charged with a depth I could almost feel pressing against my ribs. There was a tension in the memory, a silent acknowledgement of what lingered beneath the surface, like a melody played in a minor key, subtle but impossible to ignore. The way he had looked at me, briefly, fleetingly, yet unmistakably, resurfaced with every blink. It was never spoken aloud, but it existed in the tilt of his head, in the slight narrowing of his eyes, in the pauses between sentences that somehow carried more weight than words ever could. I remembered laughing at a small joke, and for a second the world seemed to shrink, leaving just the two of us in a bubble of warmth and light. That warmth had a gravity, pulling at the edges of restraint, reminding me how fragile and complicated human hearts could be. A faint gust rattled the curtains, drawing my gaze to the window once more. The rain had intensified, turning the world into a wash of motion and reflection. Each drop traced its path down the pane, twisting and splitting, much like the tangled lines of thought racing through my mind. I sipped the coffee, tasting the bitter warmth, letting it anchor me even as the emotions threatened to rise like an unstoppable tide. I thought of the walks we had shared in silence, the soft crunch of fallen leaves beneath our feet, the sky gradually shifting from gray to the muted gold of late afternoon. There was a quiet intimacy in those moments, a connection that neither time nor circumstance could easily undo. Even as I sat there, listening to the rain and feeling the pulse of quiet in the room, the ache of longing was impossible to ignore. It wasn't about desire in the way people spoke of it in stories. It was deeper, more insidious, a tether to someone who could illuminate and unsettle in equal measure. The room felt alive with memory, with possibility that could never be claimed, and I realized how every small gesture, every glance, every unspoken word had shaped a landscape of emotion that was at once beautiful and impossibly complicated. The rain continued, a soft, persistent reminder that some feelings existed beyond reason, caught in the delicate folds of human connection and the spaces between what we could feel and what we could speak. The evening settled over the city like a slow, heavy curtain, and the streetlights flickered to life, casting long, golden reflections on the wet pavement. I walked along the quiet sidewalks, the sound of my shoes splashing in shallow puddles mingling with the distant hum of traffic. The air was cool and sharp, carrying the scent of rain and earth, grounding me even as my thoughts drifted elsewhere. Each step felt deliberate, a small anchor against the tide of emotions swirling inside me. Shadows stretched along the walls, moving and merging with the dim light, mirroring the way my feelings twisted and shifted in the corners of my mind. I remembered the conversation we had shared earlier, words soft and deliberate, yet weighted with meaning that lingered long after they were spoken. There was a comfort in the familiarity of his voice, a quiet reassurance that existed alongside a subtle, undeniable tension. It was in the small gestures, the way his hand brushed against mine accidentally, or perhaps intentionally, the slight pause before answering a question, the look that seemed to understand more than any words could convey. Those moments were fleeting, almost imperceptible to anyone else, yet they resonated in me with the intensity of something unforgettable. The city seemed to shrink around me, the usual chaos reduced to muted colors and soft sounds, as if the world had decided to step back and let me exist in this suspended space of reflection. I felt the cool breeze against my skin, carrying with it the faint aroma of damp leaves and distant bakeries, a sensory tapestry that somehow made everything feel sharper, more vivid. Memories of laughter shared, of long silences filled with understanding, and of casual touches that lingered longer than necessary, floated to the surface, each one a reminder of the complexity and fragility of human connection. As I rounded the corner onto a quieter street, I caught sight of him in the distance, the glow of a lamppost highlighting the contours of his face. For a moment, everything else faded, the world reduced to the simple, breathtaking clarity of his presence. My heart quickened, a mixture of anticipation and hesitation, as the familiar rhythm of our unspoken connection pulsed between us. There was no rush, no expectation, only the quiet gravity of two people bound by understanding, by shared history, by moments that existed beyond the reach of words. The night deepened, and the rain slowed to a gentle drizzle, leaving behind a faint mist that clung to the air like a memory. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool moisture settle on my skin, and allowed myself to linger in that suspended moment, where the world was both impossibly expansive and intimately small. It was in that quiet, in the spaces between glances and the soft cadence of shared silence, that I understood the depth of connection, the ache of longing, and the bittersweet beauty of emotions that could neither be fully named nor fully contained. The night carried on around us, and I walked alongside it, each step a delicate negotiation between heart and reason, between what was and what lingered in the spaces of the soul.